Hello, and welcome back to the Triangle Business Podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Joey Nattel, and my co-star,
Scott Moore.
And this is the podcast we talk all things about business.
That's right.
And today's theme, we're going to talk about some of the pitfalls and issues we find in business, in particular around communication. So I'll throw this to you, this is more your realm, is what, in your experience and what you've seen with coaching businesses, what has been some of the biggest pitfalls? And it doesn't have to be per communication. We'll jump back to that shortly.
Well, there's a lot of different things that I see, but almost all small businesses are being sort of built from scratch. People are not necessarily following a particular model. Once in a while, I've worked with a few franchisees and they have a template to follow. Sometimes people are following somebody else's way of doing it. They had a mentor or they worked at another company. Sometimes they are a reaction to the way it was done. They're like, well, whatever I do, I'm not going to run it like George did because that guy's a jerk. But they're just making it up as they go, and that's fine. But they don't have any structure to what's next other than what feels like an emergency. They're only ever reacting, and they're not proactively planning things. One of the simple ways that I explain how small businesses tend to be the same is they kind of stand on these three legs. And I almost always am working with the business owner on one of these three legs. The three legs are marketing and sales. Theirs are not the same thing, but they are part of the same leg. Mm-hmm. Production, that is how you deliver the product or service that is the core deliverable for the business. And then administration. And of those three, admin tends to get ignored the most because it doesn't directly make you any money, but it makes the other two things more effective and more efficient. And so it's always worth circling back to and spending some time on admin. But to answer the question, like, what do I run into the most is people don't have any clearly modeled way of thinking, what should I be doing next? Mm-hmm. And so, I almost always end up taking a certain amount of inventory about like, how are we doing on marketing and sales? How are we doing on production? What's our admin systems? And then just figuring out which one of those things needs the most work. I mean, obviously, if you don't know exactly what to do, I tell people marketing and sales is the place to start. If you break your marketing and sales, like if you suddenly are like, I have more business than I know what to do with, you will be forced to fix the other problems. Yeah. So one of the other things I tell people all the time is like, we're always just creating tomorrow's problem. And that's not a bad thing. Like, life is just a series of challenges and problems that we overcome and work our way through. So don't be afraid that, well, if we get all this business, we don't have enough employees to handle it. Like, I know that's okay. Yeah. We'll find the right people or the right processes or the right admin tools when we force that problem to happen. So, those are probably, that's usually where it ends up starting. There's a few other things that I see frequently, but I can talk about those later.
Of course. Yeah. So I love what you said there. You're always, how'd you say it? You're always creating tomorrow's problems?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it makes me think of this idea of every level there's another devil. And so the boss that you defeat, using video game terminology, is like, I guess we can morph it in this analogy. It's just like the boss you defeat comes back. Maybe not comes back, but there's another boss.
Yeah.
Different challenges in a lot of ways.
Well, in our gaming hobby, like that's the, if the game was just like, well, you did it, you're done. Well, then you're done. There's nothing else to do. Like that is no longer your hobby because that particular game, that particular playthrough is no longer what you're contending with because it's over.
Mhm.
And, that's not how business works if you're going to continue to own the business. Now, some people have an end point in mind. In fact, I
Yes.
encourage them, one of the first questions I always ask is like, what happens when the business is done?
Mhm.
And sometimes the answer is the business is done. Like, I'm not trying to sell it. I'm not trying to pass it on to my kids. By the way, also, very, very, very rarely do you want to pass it on to your kids. They're not you. They're not wired the same as you. They're not great at the same things you're great at. Generational businesses are their own special case. But, if you want to sell it, I will tell you this one other thing, that when those 3 legs I was talking about, honestly, admin is probably the most important thing if you're going to sell it, because having the documentation and processes and employee handbooks and policy and procedure, all that stuff is what makes a business be sellable. Yes, you do have to have a book of business, and yes, you need to have whatever mechanism it is that you deliver the product or service. But admin is probably at the top of the list if your ultimate goal is sales.
That makes sense. When I think of that, I do think of the word communication.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. And so writing things down, making sure understanding it. I've run into a few people who, and you can speak on this probably more than I can, is that, I have it in my head. And I'm like, have you ever written it down? Well, no. Is that probably why people don't understand it? Right? Have you found that to be true with some of your clients?
Never mind my clients. It's true with me.
Yes.
Here's something that I think is really important in my understanding of the way the world works. The 2 most reliable things that every human I've ever met will do is, number 1, make up a story about everything that is happening all around them. And number 2, as soon as they make up their story, they try to be right about the story they just made up. And the reason that I believe that we do this is that human beings are story-making machines, because for most of the time that human beings have been humans, it was our only mechanism for holding on to information and passing on information. It was only ever, how do I remember it? How do I make it significant in my head so I can remember it? And how do I tell it to somebody else in a way that they'll remember it? We just invented writing a few years ago, right?
Yeah.
But in several thousand years ago, we invented some form of writing. But in the hundreds of thousands of years that humans have been more or less human, we didn't have that.
No.
So story was the only way. And I think it's one of the reasons why story is so important in every area of our life. But I have a friend of mine who focuses a lot on storytelling in business communication. She's great at that. But so what my brain is doing is when I think something's important is I better keep telling myself the story over and over again, or else I will forget. So when that's happening to me and it's 3:00 in the morning, get out of bed, I go to my office and I write it down. I write down everything I can think about what's coming up for me. And then I go back to bed. Usually I can get to sleep after that because my brain is it's etched in stone somewhere. So now I don't have to keep thinking about it. So, but yeah, that's my way of understanding the importance of story and why things go round and around and around in our head. And until we get them out, either by telling another person or by writing it down somewhere, then I always say that for me and for people like me, things aren't really real until I tell another person.
Okay.
And I understand that not everybody is wired that way.
Yeah.
My wife is probably not wired that way.
Yeah.
But you know what my wife is really amazing at? Journaling.
Yeah.
She keeps a bullet journal.
Yes.
And she writes stuff in there every day. That's her way of externalizing the thinking so that it's recorded somewhere and her brain doesn't feel so obligated to keep thinking and processing on it because it's recorded somewhere.
That's true. I mean, whether you're an external processor, which I am, versus some people are internal processors, they chew and then they share kind of thing. Why journaling or literally articulating your thoughts can be so cathartic and healthy in a lot of ways is because it literally takes the creative side of your brain and forces it through the other analytical side of your brain. So you literally are processing it through your brain in a lot of ways. So bringing back this idea of articulating your thoughts and how a lot of people have these ideas in their head, they don't share it. Like, how does that show in business and how does that get in the way? For like business owners, maybe with teams, maybe small business.
So I'll tell you one way it gets in the way. Maybe I should have said this earlier when you're like, what's the biggest pitfalls in business? But honestly, when I've been doing this for 14 years, and if I had to say one word that was the single most common problem that small business owners have, it's isolation. The fact that nobody quite gets it the way you get it about your business. Now, are there situations where that problem has largely been solved? Sure. Like I coach a few people who like they're partnerships, right? Where these two people are equally yoked in how they are propelling the business. And even though they handle different aspects of the business, they are there for each other to talk through things with. But most business owners don't have that. Most business owners they're by themselves a lot. And I'm here to tell you, like, your spouse doesn't get it. And don't put it on them to have to understand the challenges that you face in business. That's not fair because they're not in it like you are. And I've also seen situations where somebody has like that one key employee, like the person that was the first person they hired, or the person that they knew as soon as their business got going enough for them to hire one person, that was going to be the person. But I'm telling you, like, yes, they're awesome. Yes, they're a huge contribution to your business. If you think that they are equally invested in your business as you are wrong. They are not. And you probably don't speak to them the way you would appear. And they don't speak to you like they would appear. You are their boss, right? And even if they're like, I think you're making some bad decisions, the way that they will express that to you is they hold back. And like, that's partly where we come in because, we're there to tell somebody like, hey, I think you're making a bad call here, or ask them pointed questions like, like, are you sure this is the decision you're going to be happy with when you look back on it 6 months from now? But they don't have anybody to talk it through with. And that's one of the big challenges that I solve with people.
That's interesting. I've heard you say that before, where like you've expanded like doing it alone and doing it isolated. And I quote that to a lot of people now. I say, someone I know is really cool and smart once said. So on that, I like how you share the idea of like your number one best employee. Like if they're your right-hand person, they don't maybe not feel that way. And if you rely too heavily on them, well, I mean, what comes to mind is like putting all your eggs in one basket kind of way.
Sure.
To a certain degree. Taking that into a similar direction is, how do I say this? What do most business owners misunderstand about communication? Bring it back to the communication theme.
I don't know that I would characterize it like most business owners don't understand. I think people make a lot of assumptions.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think that I constantly encounter, I help my clients with hiring process. And sometimes when we're projecting out, like, how long is it going to be before this person is fully trained up? And they give me like these ridiculous numbers sometimes. Like, well, I think probably within like 3 to 4 weeks, they should be fully trained up. And I'm like, it depends a lot on what you mean by that. But I think that's crazy talk. Like for someone to acclimate to your way of doing things and understand your processes and understanding that even if they've done the same thing that your business does, where they did it before is not the same as how you run things. Mm-hmm. And you assuming that they're going to do it the way you would do it is the bane of many a business owner's existence. Like they're like, why would they do it that way? I'm like, probably because you didn't tell them to do it your way.
Yeah.
Like nobody would ever think to do it that way. I'm like, they did.
Yes. Yes.
And I mean, just to segue a little bit, this is a topic for a whole other podcast, I'm sure. But like one of the reasons that you want to make absolutely certain as a small business owner that you create a good work environment for your people is because it is incredibly costly in time and sometimes directly in money, but certainly time and productivity for you to hire them and then train them, for them to get good at what you do the way that you do it. And in environments where, you know, you're not paying people well enough, or you're not providing good enough benefits, or the job stability, it doesn't feel like it's there, that can lead to an incredible amount of wasted time if you train somebody up and then they're like, this isn't working out, and they leave. That doesn't mean you should hold on to employees that are not the right fit.
Yeah.
But like if it's one of my mentors that got me started with coaching would always say, hire character, train skill.
Hire character and train skill.
Yep.
That's a good one.
Yeah. So that, I mean, it's just down to like the person that you're like, you click with and you're like, I just feel like this person can be the right person in my business. Even if they don't have all the things that you do, all the ways that you do it. Well, I mean, mostly nobody does. Like your way of doing it. And so that assumption part gets in the way of good communication.
That's an interesting thought. Like I like that idea that you share about who would ever think to do it this way? And you say, well, they did, kind of thing. So, you know, like you said, it's assumptions in a lot of ways. And that shows up, I mean, that shows up in pretty much every type of relationship, whether it's professional or personal.
Oh, yeah.
All the time. And so I was just speaking to a gentleman recently about his business, and him and his wife were working together, and he was saying like, well, I have this idea in my head, and then they go off and kind of, it's like a printing business, and he does it, or no, she does like the printing stuff, and it was like either too big or mirrored in a lot of ways. And I was just like, well, how are you going to solve that? He was like, well, I don't really know how to keep it like left or right. And I was like, well, have you thought about a checklist so that everybody's on the same page?
Yeah.
In a lot of ways. So, and the reason why that is because, two, harkens back to what we said, having it externally out of you, physically on paper so that others can read and understand it. So when you can physically look at it or touch it, feel it, hear it, whatever, or it's an audio program, it can be re-listened to, re-heard, re-read, and then questions can be asked. Because if you tell your either friends or colleagues or your partner and obviously clients, tell them one thing, they might interpret that depending on their mood, their day, the weather, all these kind of factors. Like your emotions can come up and cloud your hearing and your sight and your judgment.
Well, this circles back also, though, to that thing I was talking about, like one of the three legs that the business stands on being admin. And admin includes things like documentation.
Yes.
And so, like, when you say, here's the handbook, or this is the section of the book that talks about this procedure, read it. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yes.
Well, they may read it and say, oh, they do that differently here than where I used to work, or I'm new to this process, but now having read it, this is what I understand, and here's the gap in my understanding, and here's the questions I have. Like, that's so much more effective than you like explaining it, and now you're relying on what did they hear, what did they miss, how did they hear it, like all the things you just said.
Yes.
And then they have no written thing to go back and reference when they're actually doing it, and they're trying to remember what you just said.
Yes.
It's funny. A mutual friend of ours is my personal trainer, and she explains to me how to do every exercise we do in her gym.
Yes. And
literally, by the time she's done explaining the third one, I've forgotten the first one. And I'm like, wait, show me the first thing again. Like again, humans are great story machines, but emulating exactly what we thought and getting it right on the first try almost never happens. And so documentation, having things written down, is like an absolute game changer in removing some of the assumptions because it's written down. And then also if they come in and they go, well, that's interesting that you do it this way because at my other company, we used to do it like this. Mm-hmm. Well, depending on how well they communicate that, you might have somebody who knows a better way of doing it or is able to spot flaws in your setup.
Absolutely. And to illustrate this point, even in a more fun, spicy way, I like to do this little exercise with people is think of the word sex. Just think of it for the audience who are listening. Mm-hmm. And think of, usually I do 5 words and like a word that comes to mind. And we'll demonstrate that here. So you come up with a few words. Let me know.
Oh boy.
We'll just do 3 just for the sake of fun. Here, just think of 3 words and let me know when you have them.
Okay.
And then we'll share to illustrate this point.
Oh man. Okay.
You got your 3?
Yeah.
Okay. Go ahead and share your 3.
I'll say fun.
Fun. Okay.
Unpredictable.
Unpredictable.
And like I want to say satisfying. That seems like kind of a no-brainer. But what I mean is like everybody's happy.
Okay. Everybody's happy. That works, right? So my 3 would be exciting, exhilarating, and fun.
Okay.
As well. So when I'm doing this in a group exercise, typically I usually do 5 and I'd say, raise your hand if you have 1 in common with the group. Usually most people raise their hands. They have 1 on the list. So keep your hands up if you have 2. Some hands go down and some hands stay up. And said, keep your hands up if you have 3. And it's usually pretty rare, but 1 or 2 might still have up. The point this is illustrating is that you thought of 1 word that we all relatively know, but you thought of 5 to 3 different words to describe it or what it means to you. So this essentially illustrates that like, just because you think you know what somebody says, you have no idea at all. And this is what we've essentially been illustrating here in kind of business as assumptions, judgments, stories, and maybe even baggage or trauma, big T, little t trauma, whether that's minor or major, can all get in the way of business in a lot of ways, right? So to wrap up our thoughts here with this episode, in your wise wisdom and your experience.
It has to be wise wisdom.
I mean, it doesn't always. It could be something silly and fun.
One thing I'll just mention, by the way, like sometimes people, I heard this question a long time ago, like, what business are you really in?
Okay.
And after some thought, I decided the business I'm in is the wisdom transportation business. So I try to set the expectation that like, don't expect me to be wise on demand. I just carry it around in the truck. And what I do is I learn things in one place and I transmit it where I see a need for that. And again, a reminder that like also really coaching is mostly about asking questions, but sometimes those questions are propelled by knowledge. If you're mostly advising people, that's really consulting work. And I do a certain component of my stuff is that. Yeah. But the point I'm trying to make is being in the wisdom transportation business, I've been around it a lot. It doesn't mean I'm going to generate it on demand.
Well, I disagree with that. So I think you're pretty wise yourself.
Okay.
But I also agree.
I will try to come up with some wise wisdom.
No, I'll say that Oh God, you said something really smart. No, I forgot what it was.
This is the way conversations go. So
It happens.
sweat it.
So,
You know what? What I will contend is that maybe just for expectation setting, you and I are having a great time having this conversation,
yes.
and we always have great times having our conversations, which is why we decided to start recording them.
Yes.
But it's not just always going to be the Scott and Joey show. We are going to be looking for guests and stuff like that. So expect on some of our upcoming podcasts, we'll have other people on because we get to have their wisdom as well.
Oh, always. Absolutely. And that's always a fun topic for sure. So I'll throw it back to you, and I'll ask the question to close out this episode is someone who is maybe they're dealing with these assumptions. Maybe they're dealing with these issues of communication breakdowns. It could be documentation, it could be the range of things that we're talking about. What would be, if you were to give one tidbit of just like, I don't know how to get better at this, what would you say to them?
I mean,
I know it's contextual, of course.
It is remarkable to me how often I'm having a conversation with a client and they're telling me about something an employee or one of their clients did, or someone that, their business partner, and they're like, what do you think they're thinking? Or like, what? Like, why would they do that? I'm like, we should probably ask them. Yeah. Like, did you ask them? And I'm always, when they're like, well, no, I'm like, okay, well, let's start there. Because that's probably the fastest way to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
And this gets talked about a lot, but I really do think, I cannot emphasize enough. My dear friend and business mentor, Bill Davis, would always say, there's one difference between big business and small business. There's one advantage that small business has over big business, because there's lots of differences, but there's only one way that small business is superior, and it's speed of execution. And speed of execution means like, I don't know, ask them. Yeah. Like, don't wait for it to happen again or see if it's a trend or send them an email. Ask the question. That's the fastest way, and that's our only advantage. So don't squander your only advantage.
I love that. Ask the question. And I'll double down on that with what I'll share leaving away is be curious. Yeah. Come from a place of curiosity and be aware of your judgments or assumptions. Those are not always judgments, but sometimes they are. And be curious, because like asking them is like, well, why'd you do that? There's a tone there, right? Yeah. I mean, some of you in corporate or other, if you've ever been an employee or something, if you receive that question, it's kind of a lose-lose kind of question, especially if you know that they really don't care. And there's nothing that your answer would do to shift it at all.
Whatever you say, that's what we'll blame this on.
Yes,
right? Yeah.
Pretty much.
But I'm a big fan of the idea that curiosity is like a cheat code of ways of being.
Okay.
I know we made like some gaming references earlier, but like curiosity is a cheat code because we have a tendency to we're not angry with people while we're being curious. We're just curious. Yeah. And people will sometimes say to me when I tell them, like, go into this conversation curious. They're like, how do I do that? And I'm like, I don't know exactly what will work for you, but what I always do is I say, I'm curious. Yeah. Because I've literally just defined myself. Like, if I'm curious, I can only do things a curious person would do.
There you have it. More wise wisdom from the transportation wisdom business gentleman over here. So thanks for listening.
Just make sure you follow it up with genuine curiosity. Like if what you do is you're like, I'm curious.
Yes.
Whose dumbass idea was it to blah, 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 right? Like, you're not curious. No. You're being judgmental. No. You're just hanging a sign on it that says curious, mislabeling it as curious. Or
wearing a cloak that says the curious cloak, and really you're like judgmental person though. And on that note, thank you for listening. And if you're curious to hear more about what we have to say and the wisdom we'll share, hit that follow or subscribe button or whatever platform you're listening to. That's right. And thanks for listening. See you next time.
Thanks for being here.